Anambra State Governor Willie Obiano. The Ministerial Committee on Aviation Security has recommended the establishment of a National Civil Aviation Security Board. The board is expected to coordinate all security rules and regulations in the aviation industry in Nigeria. This is in line with International Civil Aviation Organization. The Minister of State for Aviation, Senator Hadi Sirika, also received a report on the Review and Amendment Civil Aviation Act 2016, which he says will be speedily considered.
Please sit down.
These two ministerial committees meeting with the Minister of State for Aviation, Senator Hadi Sirika, to present report findings and recommendations were constituted in February 2016 for the Review and Amendment of Civil Aviation Acts 2016 and the assessment of security at Nigerian airports. The minister expressed concern over the obsolete state of aviation acts, which were hastily reviewed for the first time in 2006 after the initial enactment in 1964. But the chairman of the Aviation Act Review Committee, Ibrahim Idris, is positive that their findings and recommendations are exhaustive.
I was the deputy chairman, House of Representatives Committee on Aviation, and I initiated the review of the Civil Aviation Act, which of course went through a lot of hitches, and eventually we had a document in 2006 that was called the Civil Aviation Act 2006 as amended. And even at the time, I was more than convinced that the act was inadequate.
What we found were there was some overlap in terms of functions of some of these agencies in the existing acts. We also observed that there were some service providers that were also carrying out functions of regulators.
Also presenting its report on airports operations, compliance to international security regulations and conventions, as well as the security architecture of Nigerian airports, the chairman of the Aviation Security Committee listed the establishment of a National Civil Aviation Security Board as key among its recommendations. This is following the minister's concern about the critical role of aviation security in Nigeria.
Aviation, it's a very critical element for national security, economic security, political stability, and the well-being of the Nigerian people.
The International Civil Aviation Organization recommends that each country should have what they call National Civil Aviation Security Program. That program gives guidelines to all security arrangements, what to do or what not to do. And to achieve that, all countries should have National Civil Aviation Security Committee.
These committees are convinced that the recommendations made in their reports will cause visible changes in the aviation industry if well implemented. And the minister, who considers these as the first assignment of his ministry, says the reports will not end up on shelves, but will be taken seriously. Omelogo, Nadi Channels Television News.
Let's bring in Anne Wawodo now with business news.
You first. First Bank.
Good evening, welcome to Business News. Nigeria's overnight interbank rate rose marginally to an average of 3.5% today, and that's from 3% last week following a decline in banking system liquidity. Traders say about 21.6 billion naira in CRR was withdrawn from the banking system by the CBN on Thursday, pushing up the cost of borrowing among commercial lenders. The liquidity level now stands at around 380.53 billion naira, down from 454 billion naira last week. Interbank rate is expected to decline sharply in the coming weeks following President Muhammadu Buhari's assent of the 2016 budget today. Leading brewer Nigerian Brewers has announced plans to scale up its corporate social responsibility programs in areas of education, health and youth empowerment at its 70th anniversary. Now, this plan was communicated to journalists at one of the sessions preceding the annual meeting of the listed company. At that event, the management explained that the pressure on the purchasing power of Nigerians has compelled the board to pay more attention to humanity.
These engagements with journalists, organized by Nigerian Brewers, precedes the annual meeting with shareholders. It's put together to provide updates on the brewers' performance in the 2015 financial year. The listed company had seen a 10.3% decline in revenue and posted a net profit of 38.04 billion naira. The chief executive, Mr. Nicholas Verveld, relates these numbers to the headwinds in the operating environment.
Over the last few years, the growth has been around 1 to 2%. And that has quite an impact, given that inflation remained relatively high at 9 to 10%. So those are two things I would say to keep in mind when to look at these results.
He explains how some strategies helps to keep the business above waters.
With innovation and with acquisitions, we have built up a very, very strong portfolio that sort of is complementary to the portfolio that Nigerian breweries had, let's say, in 2010 before the acquisitions.
Nigerian breweries will be 70-year-old by November, but management plans to keep the celebration low-key.
Given the challenging operating environment, our celebration this year is deliberately low-key. What we will keep, we shall sustain our Winning with Nigeria initiatives in the field of education, health, water, youth empowerment and talent development.
Nigerian Breweries prides itself as the market leader among brewing variants. The company's goals are to remain customer-focused and sustain cost leadership.
The Nigerian stock market rebounded at the close of today's transaction in response to the signing of the 2016 budget by President Muhammadu Buhari. Harriet Agbenyi has more.
Over 181.10 million shares were traded by investors today in 3,710 deals valued at 1.16 billion naira. FBN Holdings, Transcorp and Zenith Bank were among top contributors to the total market turnover. Market breadth returned positive, led by Forte Oil, up 10.25% to close at 219 naira 92 kobo. The oil firm was trailed by Tiger Brands, Flour Mills and 24 other stocks. 11 stocks shared weight, led by AXA Mansard Insurance, Portland Paints and Products and Carverton Offshore Support Group. The announcement that President Muhammadu Buhari has signed the budget filtered in just before the market close. Investors' reactions are expected when market resumes on Monday. At the end of the session, the all-share index rose 0.54% to 25,701.60, with market capitalization breaching 8.84 trillion naira. Those are the day's trading figures. I'm Harriet Agbenyi.
And let's move to the crude oil market now, where prices rose today but ended lower for the week, snapping a 4-week winning streak as the dollar softened. Analysts say the prices were supported by a wildfire that shrunk Canadian oil sands crude production by a third, and reports of a militant attack on the Chevron platform in Nigeria's oil-rich Niger Delta region. However, traders are very concerned that the global surplus still exists and there is a possibility that oil prices could retrace further. International benchmark Brent crude futures were up by 24 cents to settle at $45.25 a barrel. They have risen 64% since nearing a 13-year low in mid-January. Global equities ended the week slightly mixed on the back of a disappointing U.S. job data. Let's see the figures. And that's Business News tonight. Thank you for watching. The rest of the news at 10 continues now. I am Anne Nwawadu.
You first. First Bank.
When the news at 10 returns, Tottenham Hotspur midfielder Moussa Dembele gets 6-match ban for violence conduct. We'll have more in sports news. Please stay with us.